Welcome to Our Scars Speak. My name is Christina Miner. I'm the host of this podcast. And before we begin, I'd like to give a disclaimer that you are listening at your own discretion. We are not telling you to go against your medical treatment plan or anything that your medical professionals or mental health professionals or any professionals that you see. We're not telling you to go against that. We encourage you to listen to what they have to share with you, but we're just here merely to give you information, educate you on some information that we have, and also for support. But you are definitely listening at your own discretion. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Nicole Rizzuto. Rizzuto, did I pronounce that right?
Rizzuto.
Rizzuto, I still got it wrong. Okay.
That's okay. Hi there.
Rizzuto. So thank you for coming on again, Nicole. I'm so excited about everything that you're doing. I love your personality. It seems so outgoing. And just thank you for coming on to share.
You're very welcome, and thank you for having me. I love talking to people about medical tattooing, advocating for survivors or anyone who's looking for medical tattooing, or even just asking, like, what is medical tattooing? Like, what?
Right.
I get that a lot. Like, what is that?
I love it. I love it. And I mean, just everything that you're doing, your new podcast, which I'm sure you're going to get into all of that. But I started following you before the podcast and just kind of like fell in love with your whole vibe and
Oh.
your whole IG page. And I was like, man, she's really got it going on over here. And so then I seen the podcast and I was like, oh, I got to start following her.
Yeah.
But yeah, so thanks again. And I guess the first question I want to ask you really is just who's Nicole? How would you
Mm.
describe yourself?
I'm fun at parties now. So I am currently a licensed tattoo artist in Long Island, New York. I was born in Long Island and then raised upstate for the majority of my teen years in upstate New
Hmm.
York. I started traditional tattooing in my early 20s. And it
Wow.
was small time stuff, like a family friend was a tattoo artist,
Mhm.
and I knew I was always an artist, like, I would be the kid taking tinfoil and making little sculptures, or always
Wow.
doodling in my, like, books and stuff, and playing with wax, and just always creating something, and my mom saw it, and she kinda nurtured that part, like, "Alright, well, if you wanna do extra drawing classes or whatever," so I always knew I had some type of artistic ability and skill, and it was comforting to me.
Wow.
Um, and as you get older in teenage years, you're like, "I don't know what to do with my life." So, as an artist, I know I wanted to do something like a 9 to 5 office
Mhm.
job to me just it's not my personality.
Right.
So, if I could do something with art to, 1, support myself, be happy what I do, and I was a little rebel at that time in high school, obviously, like going to parties and, whatever. So the tattoo world was attractive to me for the rebelliousness, but for the
Mm.
freedom, for the creativity, just what it all represented. And again, if I begged a family friend of mine to help, please teach me, please teach me, please teach me. He's like, all right,
Oh.
fine. And he was very kind. Larry Peterson, thanks, Larry. I'll never forget that. Um, and he taught me like basics with needles, the different types of needle configurations. I did a lot of practicing on oranges and bananas and finally started doing traditional tattooing. And then I did that for a few years, but then I was diagnosed with a rare kidney cancer at 24. So,
Oh my gosh. I didn't
yeah,
know you had a backstory with cancer.
yeah, I'm a kidney
Wow.
cancer survivor.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was scary, it was difficult. I had
Mhm.
a couple surgeries, ended up losing the kidney. They tried to preserve it because I was so young, but I had a recurrence, so and because it was a very rare type of cancer, they didn't wanna mess around, so, but because of that and the really challenging experiences with the multiple surgeries, I had complications. There
Mm.
was a point where I did like a foxhole prayer, and I know this sounds kitschy, but it's the truth, where I asked the universe, like, please let me live and I
Mhm.
will donate my life to helping others. I just am not ready to die yet.
Wow.
And I kept that promise by after getting the okay from the second surgery, I looked into becoming a certified surgical technologist. My mother is an operating room nurse. She's been an OR nurse forever. And I always liked the OR side, like the
Right.
medical, like we're into that. Like, oh, I love human, anatomy. It's so
Yeah.
cool. I was drawn to that. So I'm like, all right, this is something where, because I didn't think tattoos were like putting like, a badass tribal on someone's arm. I'm like,
Right.
it's not helping anybody. I mean, helping that person, but I wanted to do something where I felt I can give back in a
Right.
greater way. So working in the operating room, I transitioned into that, and I did that for 12 years. I didn't do tattooing for a
Mhm.
very long time. I did still do drawing,
Mhm.
sculpting. I would draw tattoo designs for friends, but I was mostly in the OR. And what I
Wow.
specialized in was everything. I did orthopedics, neuro, spine surgery, craniotomy procedures, pediatrics, Da Vinci robot, oncology, general. And I even did, mastectomy and reconstruction surgery. So I've been part of the surgical team who is in the OR with you.
Mhm.
I always say when the doctor says scalpel, I'm the one that hands it to him. That's what
Yeah.
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. So I used to be what they called in North Carolina CNA2. So you have like
Okay.
CNA1, CNA2. So your
Yeah.
CNA2 is a little bit more than the one, and it's like right underneath the nurse. So yeah, so I used to go in the OR sometimes and
Yeah.
see different surgeries and stuff. And I was always just fascinated by the human body.
I
So
love it.
fascinated by the human body.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you talked about the cancer. First and foremost, before I even get there, I kind of chuckled inside because you know how you always see the movies and people are tattooing like fruit. And
Yeah.
I often wonder, like, is that a real thing? So
Yeah.
when you mentioned that, I was like, oh, it is a real thing. Okay.
Yeah. Well, that was like late 90s, early 2000s. Now you have really like nice fake silicone skins that
Okay.
artists can practice on. We didn't really have that when I was doing it. So oranges were like the best option.
Yeah.
Grapefruits. Yeah.
That makes sense though.
Yeah.
So when you said, I just kind of chuckled. I'm like, oh wow, that's the thing. Um, so with the cancer though, if you don't mind, just to share a little bit. Now, first of all, how old were you? You were in your teens?
I was 24 when I was first diagnosed.
24. Okay.
Found it by accident. Yeah.
Wow. So can you share a little bit about that if you don't mind, like how you
Sure.
found it and like what was your treatment plan? Because I really didn't know that you had that backstory.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I originally went to a GI doctor because again, I'm a young person
Right.
doing whatever. I don't eat the best. Like, I used to smoke cigarettes and have
Yeah.
5-hour energy drinks and Pop Tarts, and that was like my basic food group.
Yeah.
And I had some GI issues. So I went to a GI doctor and she's very nice. Someone my mom worked in the hospital, so I had connections with like doctors
Yeah.
and stuff. She's feeling my abdomen. She's like, let's just get a CAT scan, make sure everything's okay. And that's how they discovered this
Mm.
softball-sized tumor on my, left kidney.
Wow.
And so then I knew something was strange. They gave me copies of my, images, and I'm like, "What is that?" Because I knew a little bit about anatomy. I'm like, "What is
Mhm.
that? Is that like a weird shadow?" 24 hours, they called me back and told me to
Wow.
come in. They referred me to a urologist who then told me, this is pretty extensive. I recommend you going into the city. So I went to Sloan Kettering, and then I ended up actually finding a doctor in Beth Israel. I had a open partial nephrectomy. Again, they tried to preserve the kidney because I was so young.
Right.
It was very large, but they were going to just try to remove the tumor itself. They didn't know what kind of cancer it was until they
Mm.
removed it. And I was under surgery for around 6 hours. Knowing what I know now, working
Mhm.
in the operating room,
Mhm.
sadly, it's like, things you shouldn't. I
Yeah.
I lost a lot of blood. I had to get 4 units of, blood, and I actually developed, complications after surgery where they originally thought I had developed a blood clot because my oxygen levels were dropping.
Mm.
I was, spiking fevers. So that's when the foxhole prayer happened because 'cause I'm like, "Don't tell me." I know what blood clot means, like, that means I can
Right.
die.
Right.
So I did the foxhole prayer. Come to find out I had, what's called, oh my goodness, I'm forget pleural effusion. That's
Mm.
what it is.
Okay.
So it's very common when someone's under anesthesia for a long time where fluid kinda develops outside the lungs instead of
Mhm.
inside, like pneumonia or whatever. So they started treating me with medication. I started getting better, but I was in the hospital for a while. Um so they told me it was a rare type of cancer, and I just had to get these nuclear med scans to check to see if there were any recurrences. And then, like 6 months later, it lit up, and there were still cancer cells. So since the weird experience down in the city, I wanted to be closer to home because my parents were traveling 2 hours to come to
Right.
the city. I wanted to just be closer to home, so I went back to the original urologist. And I'm
Mhm.
like, "Listen, if you're just gonna take out the kidney and not do any fancy stuff, like, can't you just do it?" He's like, "All right, fine." So I had another procedure where they did another open, radical nephrectomy. But again, because it was a rare type of a cancer and they weren't sure. They kind of did a little bit more extensive surgery where they removed part of my diaphragm. I had a rib removed, the rest of
Wow.
my adrenal gland, my ureter. They shaved off like skeletal muscles and some lymph nodes, and because they just weren't sure, you
Right.
know. So luckily, I did better the second time around. It's weird, like your body's like, we've been through this, we got this. I only needed 2 units of blood. I was like, okay,
Okay.
that's a little better, And he said, like, when we got in there, it was just full of packing. Like, again, like working in the OR, we have products that you can leave into people that
Right.
are safe to leave in, but it's to control bleeding. And he's like, you were packed to the gills in there. Something must have happened. I'm like, that's scary to know. But then I continued with the nuclear med scans, got the clear at 5 years, and they're like, okay, you're good. And that's that. And I think around year 8, and I talk about this with my clients. I work with a lot of
Mhm.
breast cancer survivors, and I don't know what it's like to lose my breast, but I know what it's like to hear the word cancer. You have cancer. And there's like a PTSD thing that happens. Like, even though you get the okay, you're clear, it's like, is it gonna come back?
Yeah.
Like this, it triggers you. So at year 8, I remember walking into this urologist's office who knew my other surgeon. I'm like, "Can I just have a scan?" He's like, "Why are you here?" Like, he had to sit me down. He's like, "You can't live like this. Yeah, we'll do a
Yeah.
scan, but I'm telling you." And sure enough, I was fine.
Yeah.
But it's just this weird thing that happens. But
Mm.
I've been trying to not hyper focus on that and live the happy life. And yeah, so that's that.
No, that's good to know though, because no, and that's what I tell people all the time. Like when you hear, and then I actually my thoughts became reality because I start doing research. Like this has got to be PTSD because you hear a lot about like the chemo brain, like you can't
Yeah.
remember nothing. And I was like, I haven't been through chemo. I had breast cancer, but my treatment plan didn't involve chemo, but I'm experiencing this and I know I'm not losing my daggone mind. Like I know this is something that's happening to me. And I was like, could it be some type of cognitive thing that from the trauma of it all? So I started doing a lot of research, asking
Right.
a lot of my friends who are therapists, and I'm in school now for becoming a therapist. So I was like, this has got to be linked. And then research started coming out that they are now trying to change their verbiage from chemo brain to cognitive impairment, which is a thing, but they're trying to relate it more to like because you heard those words that you have cancer of any kind, it starts from that point and
Yep.
progresses. So yes, no, I totally agree with you that just hearing those words can take us to this place that's not pleasurable at all,
No.
of any little scratch, bump, lump. It's like,
Yeah.
what is this?
And then again, like, working in the OR too, it's and all these things, you're like, "It's
Yep.
my headache," like, something, like, really bad, you're like, "Just calm down."
Yeah, that's
It's
the
so bad.
people, yeah, that's another thing people don't understand when you've worked in the medical field, and even if you haven't been a doctor, you're around it. You were around it. You were around the
Yeah.
verbiage. You use the verbiage. And it's like, dang it, it's good to know things, but sometimes maybe it's good not to know as much as
Yeah.
you know.
Ignorance can totally be blissful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So, okay, so you have this connection already with cancer. You started out pretty much out the womb as an artist, it seems like. So there was already that. And then you just migrated into the OR and started working there, ended up having cancer as well. So tell us a little bit about just pursuing becoming an actual licensed tattoo artist.
Yeah, so towards, I would say, year 10 of my surgical tech career,
Mhm.
I really was kinda getting burnout. Again, I did a lot of heavy orthopedic surgery,
Mm.
and I liked it because I liked the challenge of it. I want to always prove to someone, like, yeah, especially orthopedics is a man's world, and as a woman, it's like, "Nah, I could do this. I know what a screwdriver is versus, like, an oscillating saw,"
Right.
and I like the challenge and the fact that, number 1 for me, like, the promise that I kept, I held that wholeheartedly to me,
Mhm.
and so I knew if I was gonna be in the operating room, I was gonna be number 1 due diligence, making sure that patient was safe with everything that I could possibly
Right.
do, and so I, not to sound egotistical, but I was very good as a surgical tech. I taught a lot of other
Right.
people how to do very difficult cases, but it's heavy, it's taxing, They're long cases, you're on your feet for hours, you're wearing heavy lead, you're lifting heavy trays, especially with these big orthopedic cases like revisions or fractured
Mhm.
total joints. It's a lot. And it's very stressful. And I just felt like, whew, I'm only in this career very shortly, 10 years, and I'm like, I want to retire already. So I thought like maybe I can get back into tattooing, but I have so much respect for that art form from when I did do it for a brief amount of time,
Right.
and how to get back into it. Like now I'm in my, like mid to late 30s,
Mhm.
and I have this big chunk. How can I just jump into doing an apprenticeship again? Like I'm so rusty. I wouldn't even know where to start. So it was challenging. I actually asked one of tattoo artists that tattooed me. I'm like, "Would you take me on as apprentice?" He's like, "What? No, like you're an adult. Like that's stuff for like kids and take because an apprenticeship is basically you
Wow.
work in the shop, you work
Uh-huh.
for free, but they're going to
Oh.
train you how to
Mhm.
do tattooing." I can't afford to go part-time and work for free in a shop, as a 38-year-old, right?
Right.
So he was like, I mean, it's just not ideal. So one day I was working with some plastic surgeons and I discussed my past tattoo career and like his head flipped around. He was like, "You used to tattoo?" I'm like, "Yeah, why?" It's like, "What are you gonna judge me?" He's like, "You should do nipples." I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about." So in the main
Oh,
OR, I did reconstruction, I did
right.
mastectomies, but the nipple grafts, nipple tattooing, that's all, in office or
Mhm.
outpatient stuff. I didn't even know that process. We only saw the major surgery, that part of it. So any other
Right.
additional stuff, I wasn't ever involved with that. So I didn't really know. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he knew I was an artist, that I was very creative. Like I was fun little fact, I'm also a professional pumpkin carver. I was on the Food Network channel on
Oh,
a
wow.
pumpkin carving competition. Yeah, like I'm just one of those like jack of all trades. I love just doing
Right.
creative stuff. So he knew I was very creative. He's like, "Look, if you do what you got to do to find like training, we'll hire you and you can do the tattoos for us." I'm like, I think this might be my in. Like, this may be the
Right.
way I can somewhat get back into tattooing. And so I took some, basic training. It was okay, but I got to tell you, I had fundamental experience with tattooing healthy skin, right?
Mhm.
Nice designs. But now we're discussing radiation. We're discussing possible necrosis, multiple surgeries. Like, this
Right.
skin is so challenging to tattoo. And it's like no one can really tell you in like a 2-day course what to
Mm.
expect. And that's kind of how the system is set up, with anyone trying to do like online training or in-person training. I think the longest I know is like of 5 days. But again, 5 days is not enough for anything, you
Wow.
know? So a lot of baptism by fire, sadly, but luckily I had the medical background that I have to know a lot more than like say just a traditional tattoo artist trying
Mhm.
to do this, which was hugely beneficial to me. And then, I just sought out like other people to discuss things and share information and like have a community of other artists who are proficient in this.
Mhm.
And I finally like that's the other thing because I respect tattooing and I
Right.
respect the surgical world. I was very cautious and always doubted myself, even though I had the knowledge and information. It
Mhm.
was just, I would learn something from someone in like a day or two, be like, I don't know if that's right, but that's what they're saying. I don't know. Until I learned, like, no, I understand this. I know this more than the average person. And I was able to be in my own confidence and trust my own intuition. And that's when I noticed my work like really evolving
Mm.
and like not fearing, like, again, because working in the operating room is a very structured kind of environment with managers and higher ups.
Right.
But creating tattoos and being creative, you're in charge. You're the boss. You
Yeah.
know what's right and you know what to do next. So I had to learn to kind of just to feel more comfortable in my intuition. And
Mhm.
it definitely, I think, has helped me up to this point to do like really beautiful, artistic, natural looking tattoos to help people. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's how, oh wow, I didn't know that part of the story either. So when you started yeah, because that's outpatient more so than of course inpatient. So when you started that, what was the link? Because now you have your own business, correct?
Yeah, so I worked with the plastic surgery group for 2 years, and
Mhm.
that was amazing because they gave me a lot of clients. I didn't have to try to, like, find my own clients like a tattoo artist might have to advertise themselves. They're like, "Here you go," and all these people coming in, like 3 people a day, and that's a lot. And so I got, like, a lot of volume, very short time,
Right.
and all different types, like people who've had the tattoos, people who, you know, had different types of reconstruction. I get to see the results. So
Mhm.
again, I'm in the OR. I see how it looks, fresh sutures. It looks great, but I'm seeing like how it heals and how the scars heal. And I'm like, I remember that suture and look how that healed. So it was such an amazing
Wow.
experience to gather information and kind of data to understand how to proceed with the tattoos.
Mhm.
But, I was limited because I was only able to work with their clients or their patients, and I started getting people reaching out to me like, "Hey, can you help me?" And they're not part of their practice, so I opened up my own business. And so I started seeing people outside the practice, and then people wanted, like, body tattoos. I'm like, "Man, I can't, like, just do this in a little office," so I opened up my own studio, and I see people from, like, all over the country. I had a couple this woman and her husband flew in from Mexico. I was like, "That's so wild. That's so cool. Thank
Wow.
you." Yeah, it was so
Yeah.
awesome.
That is awesome.
Yeah, and
So oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, it's okay.
So you okay, so you were in the office and then of course the clients, which that was perfect. Did you ever go back and do any type of apprenticeship with a tattoo company or studio or anything in between that time?
So not an apprentice. I did take a mentorship with an artist for a year. Again, it's just kinda it was mostly like, yeah, you know how to do that. Like, yeah, like
Right.
just confirming what I already knew, but I just had my doubts because there was no one,
Gotcha.
it's one thing to, again, tattoo healthy skin, but man, sometimes you look at skin that looks healthy and you start tattooing and it's like, "Whoa, what is going on?" The
Right.
reaction could be medication they're on, supplements, herbs, or the skin is way more damaged and you just can't see it because it's more internally. And you're just like,
Okay.
"What do you do?" Like you're there all alone, like,
Right.
What do you do?" Um but over time, connecting with other artists too and discussing cases and, challenging things. And then because I have a medical background, more artists started asking me like, "Hey, what do I do if someone has like active lymphedema?" They're
Okay.
not aware. Or, What about this medication? Could this like do something with tattoos?" And so I just really kind of over time with the 12 years that I had and the 3 years I did with tattooing, like, I just was able to, like, "No, I think I got this."
Right.
But it's a practice just like anything,
Mhm.
and you're always going to evolve things, and I'm one of those artists that I know that if things can get improved with technique, with products that we use, with styles, with, aftercare, I'm always willing to do better to have it better. I have a good rhythm so
Yeah.
far, and results have been amazing, but it's also just managing, expectations and realizing that this is different type of skin. This is compromised skin. Sometimes people will never be approved for the tattoo for whatever reason, severe damage, or for whatever reason. So having that, understanding the empathetic side of it, giving that person space to feel how they feel, what they've gone through.
Right.
Like, that's the other thing I tell people, like, I never say, "Oh, you should be grateful you're alive." Like, man, that's so insulting. It's
It
so
is.
insulting,
It is.
you know? It diminishes their experience. It's like, if someone's mad, like, still angry, like, yeah, they have that right they have a right to be mad,
Absolutely.
you know?
Absolutely.
So
So
it's a mixed bag of artistic ability, the emotional side, the
yeah.
empathetic side, and like technical skills. It's fun.
Yeah, and it's just so your personality, and I love the fact that you have all those different dynamics to your life that is able to help you become the artist that you are today. Um, with that being said, if you don't mind, I do want to get into some myths that you have because I've been
Mm.
watching your IG. Like I said, I know you have some myths. Um,
Yeah,
but
let's get into it.
before we get into that, I would like to ask you For anyone out there who's trying to become a tattoo artist,
Mm.
or especially specializing in the 3D nipple tattooing, what do you suggest for them? I know you can't tell them what to do, but what are some, do you have any suggestions that they need to be aware of, or things that they just need to know before going into that endeavor?
Yeah. It's difficult because, like, say if someone wanted to become a surgical tech, there are, registered schools that you can sign up for the program, and they have a curriculum and then a whole process of to take your test. You can get
Right.
licensed within your state, and it's like blatant clear. But with tattooing, as of today, as of right now, it's not really, uh, you know,
Regulated like that.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So if someone, it depends on the person's background too. So I get a lot of, like, young people like, "Hey, I wanna do this. Can you teach me?" And I'm like, "I don't have the time to apprentice." But if someone really wants to learn, like, go right to medical tattooing, I really strongly suggest do some type of fundamental or traditional tattooing first. You're skipping a bunch of steps before you get to a specialty, because I believe medical tattooing is a specialty in itself. Just like if you think about surgery, this is the best way to think about it. There's general surgery, and
Hmm.
every resident or intern has to go through a residency of understanding general, how to do a hernia, how to do a lap chole. Then you go into a fellowship, into a specialty like urology or orthopedics or whatever else. You don't skip the line and go right
Right.
into a specialty.
Right.
And medical tattooing is a specialty in the tattoo world. Again, you need to kind of understand the fundamental stuff before you jump into it. Most people don't like that answer because they just wanna do it right now, but
Right.
that's to me, that's really imperative to know fundamental tattooing, different needle configurations. Do you know how the machine works? What are in tattoo inks? How does the healing process work? This is
Mhm.
all basic stuff. The second thing, having some type of artistic ability is ideal. I mean, you don't have to be Picasso to become a tattoo artist. Obviously, you can develop this over time. One of the things that I did was draw over and over and over. I
Mm.
looked at other, known tattoo artists, copied their flash and just like try to copy their style. And then like you develop your own style, but you're continually drawing. So if you want to do nipples, can you draw a nipple? Because if you can't draw it, you're not gonna be able to tattoo it. So that's the other thing, to start practicing drawing. And if someone is like I get a lot of traditional tattoo artists asking how can they get into it.
Mhm.
So in my opinion, it's there's no, again, like if someone wanted to be a nurse, there's no like system set up in
Right.
place. It's if you're lucky, you can get an apprenticeship with a tattoo artist who
Mhm.
specializes in it if they're willing to take you on. um you can kind of take these courses online, in person, but again, there's no, like, I did that too and it was good for fundamental stuff, but when I needed continual guidance or an issue came up, like, it was
Right.
kind of left on me to figure it out. Like, again, in the OR, when I'm teaching someone, I'm there with them for 6 months and watching them, correcting errors, making sure they do the right thing. It's not like that in tattooing unless you are under an apprenticeship in a shop. So it's kind of hard to get into it. There's no like straight answer. I will say just be cautious with online stuff. Like if it seems like a money grab for you, and this can go be with like any, with the
Yeah.
pandemic. The pandemic blew up a lot of these online courses.
Yeah.
um if there's no price listed, like what these courses are, or is this person's work available to see, like they're going to tell you how to do nipples but you don't even find their work, like that's
Mhm.
just red flags. If your gut is like telling you something's weird, don't don't do it. Don't, because it's a lot of it is kind of scammy out there. But it's hard, and I feel bad for people who reach out to me. I just don't have the time. I've thought about it, like, maybe in the next 5 years, because I have some other projects I'm working on, to take
Mhm.
on an apprentice or a fellowship, as I call it, because
Mhm.
for me, you need to understand fundamentals, and then you go into your specialty. But as of right now, no. But I am always open when an artist reach out to me like, "Hey, I have a problem. What do I
Right.
do?" Because for me, again, number one is that client safety. So I'm not gonna like gatekeep, like, "Oh, I don't know, go pay me $20 so then you can set up a call." Like, I'm not into that.
Right.
If the patient's right then or the client's right then and there, and it's something that I can help and I can see it, I'm gonna answer it.
Okay.
Again, and that's comes from my OR mentality, the operating room
Right.
mentality, like, we're a team. It's not about, like, oh, it's, this, like, weird this weird dynamic, but yeah. So I have a lot of that, the operating room mentality into my tattooing career.
No, but that makes sense. That's because you care about people. Um, and you're not trying to just get rich quick off
Yeah,
of people. So that says
yeah,
a lot about your personality overall, because there, I think it's like that in every anything and many things in this world. There's just always someone out there like, oh, well, I know I can make $1 off this, so I'm gonna go ahead and put a charge towards this consultation or towards this or that or the other. And they kind of forget about, well, not kind of, they forget about why. Why did
yeah.
you start this? And what about the client? Like, what about the goodness of the client, the well-being of the client? So thank you for being that person who actually cares. And yeah, I can't foresee you doing apprentice right now, because you seem like the type that, like, if I'm going to give you all of me, I'm going to give you all of me and not part of me.
Yeah,
And you seem like you just be like, nope, not right now, maybe
yeah,
later.
yeah.
Because you're very detail oriented too. So you would want them to get everything. So myths.
Mm.
What are, if you would like to talk about some of the myths that are out there that kind of just makes you a little agitated, or just
Oh,
kind of you want people to know, like, don't
yeah,
do that or whatever.
yeah. So, uh, I'm very vocal about it because, again, my incentive is to protect people from being harmed.
Mhm.
So one of the things that I've called out a myth, and this was in an Allure magazine article,
Mm.
that they interviewed this permanent makeup person who has a school in New Jersey, and they interviewed her about doing nipple tattoos, and there was this whole paragraph about how they use cosmetic inks versus tattoo inks because cosmetic inks are sterile and more clean. Now, this is absolutely false, and that doesn't make sense. To be honest, tattoo ink, it's all pigment.
Mm.
There are different carriers, like some may use witch hazel, some may use alcohol, some may use other, carriers, and there are different pigment, like colors and stuff, but
Right.
it's all the same. It's all the same. Some have more organic compounds of pigments that do absorb faster into the skin, so hence why cosmetic has a little bit more of the organic,
Mm.
compounds, but it's all tattooing. There will always be ink. But to say that cosmetic inks are safer and sterile than tattoo inks is just an absolute, like, insult to the whole entire tattoo community, which cosmetic tattooing comes from. Again, that's its own
Right.
specialty, but we all come from fundamental tattooing. But it's putting this stereotype on traditional tattoo artists. I
Mhm.
use world famous Eternal Ink, Intense Ink, and they're all very well, highly, recommended USA companies that make inks, and they are gamma ray sterilized.
Wow.
And, having like little things like that in articles that breast cancer survivors read, and then they come to you like, do you use cosmetic inks? Because I heard they're more sterile and clean. Like, what? And it's just like, it's just, it doesn't make any sense. And someone does that so they can look better. And it's just like, what's your incentive behind that? Do you have a pigment line that you're trying to sell, with your name on it and it's for like, it doesn't make sense. So that was, like, the
Wow.
big one that I called out, and I tagged Allure, I'm like, "This is wrong, and I'll explain why." Um, so it's up to the artist to make sure you're using safe, sterile products.
Mhm.
If you find a line of pigments that are more geared towards cosmetic, totally fine to use for areolas. It's also completely fine and safe to use traditional tattoo inks.
Right.
It's just it's these weird little things like that. Another part of the article was saying areola tattooing is just like in the same realm as microblading. And I'm like, the hell it is. No way. Microblading is completely different. You
Oh,
do,
wow, I never heard that one before. That's,
yeah. Again,
and
in
I'm
the
not even
Allure,
in that world. I don't even,
yeah.
I'm not a professional in there, but it just doesn't sound right.
In the same Allure article, they were like comparing it to microblading. So areola tattooing is a form of body tattoos. We use
Right.
tattoo machines. Microblading is like a hand tool with a blade on it, and you're making these individual cuts
Yeah.
to make hair strokes. That's completely different. We're
That's what
not
I was
making
thinking.
yeah, like, no, we're not making, like, any kind of cut strokes in an areola design. So, those are a
Okay.
couple of myths like that. A couple other myths I've heard, if someone had radiation, they can't get tattooed. That's a myth.
Mm, okay.
I do recommend, and I just, made a podcast about this, nipple, consultations. Your tattoo artist should examine the skin, mention if you had radiation. It's definitely noticeable most of the time with the
Right.
change of the skin. You can see the blue dots like, "Oh,
Right.
hey, you had some radiation."
Yeah.
Um, there it is tattooable, but this is where the education comes into play that you don't want to overwork the skin. So commonly radiation skin will fade more than the non-radiated side, and that's okay. Sometimes a third session is needed. I do my tattoos in two-step process. So I tell them maybe a third session is needed, but let's wait and see. But, just a fair warning, radiation usually does not retain pigment as well because it's all fibrotic tissue, the scarring in there on a whole surface area, not just an incision, but the whole surface area. It
Okay.
pulls out water. It makes the skin, even though the skin feels like tight and leathery, a lot of times with radiation doesn't mean it's stronger and like tougher. It's actually the
Mm,
opposite. It makes it very fragile. So you have to be careful working on radiated skin, but it is totally tattooable. Again, as long as that
mm.
person has the awareness and experience of working on radiation.
Okay. Yeah. So just two things. I don't so with the because when going back to that article,
Mm,
I've heard a lot of people like, I don't need to get a tattoo because I mean, what if the ink causes cancer? So I'm wondering, were they trying to kind of like play off that, like far as it being like more organic than what you all use? I mean, I'm just curious because I
yeah.
know that a lot of people, we're all very hesitant of what can cause cancer, but shucks, there's so
Yeah.
many things that can cause cancer. It's like,
Yeah.
but yeah, so can you, I guess with or without that particular magazine article, can you explain like maybe risk factors
Hmm.
of potential secondary cancers or skin cancer, I guess, or
Yeah.
whatever?
So there are some organizations, and especially in Europe, that are doing a lot more research with the ingredients in tattoo inks and if there are correlations. So as of right now, to date, that I am aware of, there are no cases directly linking tattoo inks to a specific cancer that someone was diagnosed with.
Okay,
There's no actual link from one to the other. Like again, from A to B.
right.
When if you read these articles, and one came out recently at the New York Post, and I'm like, man, because someone sent it to me, and I'm like, "Ugh, you got to read between the lines." So it says it may cause, like it may do this, it may do that, but
Right.
again, it's a scare tactic. Um, if people aren't aware, back in 2002, there was a law that passed, the MOCRA Act, that will have the FDA regulating tattoo, products and probably the inks too. So they're in the works right now to
Oh,
set
okay.
up legislation and things like that to have transparency of the, compounds, but, um, the tattoo industry hasn't been regulated ever federally.
Right.
It's
Right.
usually state to state. And there have been cases of infections, but that's usually from contamination of people using tap water or some
Mm,
dilution that got contaminated. Yeah, because there's natural bacteria that lives in the tap water. So you never use tap water when you're tattooing. But as of right now,
wow.
there are regulations that are be coming down that could be more transparent, um, what the ingredients are in tattoo inks. But again, as of right now, to date, there are no cases linking directly tattoo pigment to cancer. There have been cases where tattoo ink has been found in lymph nodes, but if you understand the healing process, that occurs in any tattoo you get.
Oh,
The
yeah.
lymphatic system kind of cleans up the area. Some of the pigment molecules and products does get taken away, and then the larger molecules that they can't take away, they get engulfed and stay suspended in your skin. That's how you keep a tattoo in there.
Wow.
Um, there are issues with like people having reactions like exposed to the sun. You see that more in like red pigments and
Mhm.
and inks like that. But I understand, I get a lot of that concerns with, my clients too. I get it. Like you've gone this far, you want to be cautious what you put in your body or
Right.
on your body. I get it. So I remind them of that, and I am up to date with any medical reports or things because things change, and I want to make sure if something does change, I want to be up to date with that.
Right.
Either remove a product or add a product, whatever it may be. It's evolving. It's a practice again. But as
Yeah.
of right now, that's the information I have. I do provide and in my tattoo studio, I have a material safety data sheet. So
Mm,
that lists all the pigment compounds and other carrier fluids that are in each pigment. If someone is really curious, I can show them that. Like,
okay.
there's certain things that like if more for like if they have an allergy to something,
Mm,
but and my question is like if it's so dangerous, where's all the rampant, skin cancer? Because more and more people are getting tattoos.
yeah. Yeah.
It's like, where's the rampant, like, tattoo cancer that's going
Yeah.
around? I don't know.
And every time that I hear something like what you mentioned about the magazine, and when they use certain words like cosmetic or holistic, and
Mhm.
I'm like,
It's
how
kitschy.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, is that because you're trying to scare people to use your product? And I haven't read the article you're referring to, but I've just seen so many things on the internet when with people using certain language, and they're like, but look, it is pure, and I'm like, yeah, but I still can't pronounce half of what you're showing me in the ingredients, so I still don't
Yep.
know what that is. I still have to go research it.
Yep.
So I was just curious, so thank you for sharing that information. And the only other question, unless you want to add more to your myths, which they can definitely go watch your pod listen to your
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah.
Uh, but insurance, though, I do want to ask you about that. And also, I love your heart tattoos that you do on the nipples. For some people, that's so pretty.
Yeah. I
um,
love it.
but definitely insurance. Have you had an issue with insurance? Do sometimes your insurances cover? I know that has been a big thing, and with
Yeah.
tattoo world and
S
our situations.
Oh, yeah. So I my last episode, I talked about it because I did an
Okay.
episode, what your surgeon doesn't tell you.
Mhm.
So
Right.
the way with insurance, there's 2 ways it can go. One, a patient can get the tattoos in the doctor's office. They can submit pre-authorization like they do any visit, whatever procedure, and the tattoos can be covered. Now, again, it depends on is that, doctor covered or not.
Right.
The thing is, they can charge $5,000, $8,000. I've had after that episode, people are like, someone sent me that they wanted to open up the operating room and give her anesthesia to do tattoos. I'm like, what? And $13,000 for one tattoo session. So now that doesn't mean that they will get that from the insurance,
Right.
but sometimes they do. A lot of times they're
Yeah.
like, here's 1,000 or here, whatever. But I'm going to say this, and I don't care if it's controversial. No moral tattoo artist would ever charge $5,000 for one nipple tattoo session. Now, I understand that doctors have overhead, they have rent to pay, they have malpractice insurance. I get that. But if you're doing beautiful, phenomenal work, I could see you doing that, but they're not. A lot of times, those patients are sadly coming to me and other artists to get it corrected because it looks like not so good. And that has such a negative impact on them. So that's how it works in the doctor's office, which is an option. The second option, they go outside the doctor's office and they find a tattoo artist. It depends on the tattoo artist. So I'll speak for myself. For me, I have an NPI, National Provider Identifier.
Okay.
It's a number that
Mm,
I was assigned to that I am in the register for anyone who can work with insurance. I'm listed under medical arts.
right.
So what I do, I don't participate with any insurance because I'm a tattoo artist. And a lot of times when you have to kind of make like like negotiate with insurance, they really lowball you. Like if I
Yeah.
got paid $100 just for all my tattoos, I'd be out of business. And that's just the
Right.
reality of it. So I don't participate with insurance, but I do provide an itemized bill,
Mhm.
procedure note, and proof of receipts. So during the consultation, I ask them what their breast cancer diagnosis is. I look up the codes and I give them my tattoo codes. It has all my business information, their information, and they can submit a claim to their insurance for possible reimbursement. I tell them ahead of time, call in advance, see what your out of network benefits are.
Right.
Because every plan is different. It may be full, it may be a partial, it may go towards your deductible, you get nothing. If it's Medicare, Medicaid, I get zero. They don't care what it's for, who I am? 0, because I'm not a doctor or a nurse practitioner. They don't recognize me as like a medical professional.
Right.
And that's fine. So, and if people do struggle like financially, and I understand like, going through cancer treatment can be very, very
Yeah.
expensive for many.
Yep.
So, I luckily am part of the MTA Mastectomy Tattooing Alliance charity. It's a UK based charity,
Okay.
and I'm one of 2 of the US artists that participate with this charity who helps fund the tattoos for breast cancer survivors. So if someone's struggling, there are options too, for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of TRICARE?
No.
No? Okay, it's military insurance. I was just wondering because I have a lot of military people listen. Okay, well, I guess if you don't mind, before we get ready to ask you about your song and your one word, um, kind of tell us what's going on with you right now. I've already mentioned the podcast like numerous times, but feel
Yeah.
free to share about anything you have coming up that you don't mind sharing, where they can find you,
Mhm.
about your podcast, all that good stuff.
So, one thing we didn't get into too deep, but I am a big advocate for people reducing the harm with botch nipple tattoos being done by
Mm,
people who are just not professionally trained in the medical field and the tattoo, permanent makeup world, wherever it may be. There's offenses in all areas.
yeah.
So part of that initiative and advocacy work, I have talked to a bunch of other artists from across the world who've been seeing the same problem.
Hmm.
And I started working on a nonprofit organization with 8 other professionals and tattoo artists, and it's called the Alliance of Medical Tattooing, where we're going to be a resource for people to get the correct information. We're going to board certify tattoo artists to be, medical tattoo board certification through our peer review. We're not um, looking to sell training. This is
Right.
a membership thing, like the same thing when doctors become board certified.
Right.
It's a nonprofit, business independent company that helps support artists and the community to find reliable people to get medical tattoos. We are working still in the process. We haven't officially launched, but we are public. You can look us up on allianceofmedicaltattooing.com. But we aren't accepting members yet. We're still in the process. We're waiting our nonprofit tax exemption status. But I'm really hoping that at least we become a reliable resource for the medical industry, for survivors, and for tattoo artists to guide them what is the proper protocol standards, and ethical practices when doing medical tattoos. The idea is to again support and recognize the artists that are doing phenomenal work and to reduce the harm and have better quality tattoos for everybody. So that's what I've been working on the
That
last
is
2 years and
amazing.
still in the middle of it. And then my podcast and then just doing really good tattoos.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I'm one of those. Yeah, you're spot on with the detail. I'm very detailed oriented. I always wanna evolve and do better than my next tattoo. I've been taking on more traditional tattoos, but still like mastectomy cover-ups or scar
Mhm.
cover-ups, so that's been an amazing fun challenge, and yeah, but that's about it.
Okay, but you got to tell us where to find you, darling.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, I'm located in Belmore, Long Island, New York. My studio is NMR Tattoo. You can visit me at nmrtattoo.com. My podcast is Alchemy Inc. podcast on Spotify and YouTube and Instagram, NMR underscore medical underscore tattoo.
So what's the initials mean?
Oh, those are my
Just your
initials.
name? Your
Yeah.
name? Okay. I thought so. I was like, let me make
That's
sure
just
there's no
me.
other meaning.
I thought about, I'm like, should I be like Nouveau Medical Restorative or like, nah, that's just my initials.
I kind of figured it, but I was like, let me ask because I've been wrong with other guests
No,
before.
it's okay.
Like, okay, so you had to choose a song for your reel.
Yeah.
And I would like to know what's the name of the song, the artist, and why did you choose that? Why did you choose
Oh,
that song?
well, this is gonna show a little bit of who I am. My favorite band is Tool. It's a rock band from the 90s. I fell in love with them when I first heard the singer's voice. They're very on the heavy side. They go into like deep, deep conversations, and they had this evolution of their albums.
Okay.
and it's very progressive, and it's like very methodical, and it's just like it's beautiful, like this orchestrated beautiful pieces of music. And again, the singer's voice is, it just like lulls you to sleep. And one of their albums, it's called Lateralis, and the name of the song is the same, Lateralis, and it's very much, a psychedelic type of album where the artwork itself is very psychedelic from this, famous, artist, Alex Gray, and about like spirituality, going beyond just our bodies, and thinking outside and what's beyond us, and the realm that is beyond where we all come from, and we're all connected as one. And when I do any art or any paintings, or even when I tattoo, I don't usually listen to Tool when I'm tattooing breast cancer survivors, but if I'm doing like a friend or whatever, I put Tool on because not everyone likes heavy rock. you know but I just get into the zone, and I have this, like, connection with the music, and I just feel that, like, spirituality part of it that you feel in the music, and it's just this beautiful connection with it. And music and art to me is like,
Mm,
it's like the plants need sun and soil and water to grow. It's one of those things, like, for me to have art, I need music with it
yep,
as well, and coffee. But yes,
absolutely.
yeah, it's all intertwined, it's all creativity. Um, my mind just opens up, the world kinda blurs away, and I get into this space that is just so magical and beautiful.
Mm.
And, I love that I have that opportunity to experience that as an artist. And yeah, so that's my song.
All right. And what is your one word that you can leave with the audience, if they have wounds, mental or physical wounds that they're going through, or if they have scars, they're trying to heal, they're healing, or they've healed and they're still battling it. What's a word that you can leave with them that maybe encourages you, or maybe it's just a word that you like? And why did you choose that word?
I would choose authenticity.
Mm,
So, and we talked about it a little bit before we started that, we have these emotional roller coasters that people go through.
right.
And I think a lot of times, when you speak to other people, it's kind of like showing them their mortality too, and they don't know how to handle it. So they'll minimize things and tell you things, but it's diminishing your experience, what you've gone through. And what you've gone through is valid, and it's authentically you. And I say, whatever you experience, don't try to change that to make someone else feel comfortable. That's who you authentically
Right.
are and what you experienced. And I think if you just stick to that, you may have an easier time, but it's such a process.
Mm,
It's always evolving too, and some days are better and some days are really bad. But if you just know, like, be authentic to yourself and what you're experiencing, then no one can ever like take that away from you.
love it. So I'm gonna leave something with you. And so as I was sitting here listening to you, even before we got on, I'm like, she's definitely a warrior. I can see that. But the more you kept on talking, and then you shared about the Alliance of Medical Tattooing. Is that what it's okay? I was like, oh, there it is. You are a revolutionary. And when I hear you speak with such authority and knowing who you are, even though you may have had some battles with like imposter syndrome, feeling like,
Mm.
am I right? But I
Yep.
think honestly, a lot of people, and I can speak from the same place because writing is an art, and I do a lot of writing. I do a lot of speaking. I did performing arts. I love art. And not that great of a drawer, but I still appreciate art on that level as well. But
Yep.
I think a lot of us, we are definitely suffer sometimes from the imposter syndrome. Like, oh my God, are they gonna figure it out that I'm not? But we really are. And then being our worst, our only really sometimes competitive spirit within ourselves, not against anyone else, but just being competitive with ourselves. And I see all of that in you. And I'm like, oh my God, she's so magnificent and she's such like a genius. But you are definitely a revolutionary. You are starting things that some people are terrified to start because of what could be deemed as being controversial or political or whatever the case may be. But you are really standing up and advocating for the right of the patient, because not only do you serve patients, you've been a patient.
Mhm.
And your mental and physical scars are speaking beyond what I think some people probably even give you credit for, but you're definitely a revolutionary. And I just ask you and beg of you to continue to follow the path which you are on and continue to be the revolutionary that you are and the revolution that you are and the people who are going to join this revolution with you. Continue to lead them. You're definitely a leader, and I just encourage you to continue to go forth.
Thank you so much for
Yeah.
seeing that in me, because yes, imposter syndrome is sucks. But thank you for that. And yeah, I'm still gonna keep my promise to the universe to
Yeah.
continue to help others no matter what. And yeah, I'm not gonna give that up no matter
No,
whatever happens. Yeah.
no, and I love it. So with if you don't have anything else, this will be the conclusion of another episode of Our Scar Speak. So thank you all for listening to us today. And remember that if you have a story to tell, please share it when you feel ready to share it. You may never share it, but if you do, just know that your mental and your physical scars speak a story that can heal the wounds of another. So until next time, we see you later. Love you. Bye. Okay. Thank you so much.